Good morning, 45L. How's everyone going today? So for reading today, we'll be discussing it in our WebEx at 10:15. So I look forward to seeing you all there. But I'd like you to listen and watch this before we go into that live session, okay? So learning intention and success criteria, which is everywhere on Seesaw, we are learning to think critically about the subject of a biography, discussing the achievements, admirable traits and flaws of the individual. To be successful, I can notice evidence that a writer provides to show character attributes, motives, as well as character changes. I can think critically about how a writer does or does not make a topic interesting and engaging. That does not is important because we can read something and it's okay if it doesn't engage us. If we think, this isn't for me, but you need to explain why. Okay, you can't just read something and say, no, I don't like it. You need to think critically about why it doesn't appeal to you, okay? Just because you can't just say, I don't like it. It's not interesting. Well, why isn't it interesting, You need to think critically about things. And success criteria 3, I can talk about why the subject of a biography is important or sets an example for others. So I'm going to read you something right now. Amelia Earhart, Little Dreams, Little People, Big Dreams, okay? Amelia Earhart. All right. When Amelia was a little girl, she liked to imagine that she could stretch her wings and fly like a bird. I think we all had that imagination and used to play those imaginary games when we were little, didn't we? When she was older, she went to an air show. The plane soared into the sky, leaving Amelia on the ground. She wished she could go with them and see what they saw. She got a ride in an airplane and she liked it so much she did not ever want to come down. Ooh. Would that be an influence on her? We've been speaking of influences a bit lately. So Amelia learnt to fly. After months of practicing, she became the first woman to fly up to 14,000 feet. So Amelia learnt to fly, and after months of practicing, she became the first woman to fly up to 14,000 feet. That sounds like an accomplishment to me, doesn't it? What do you guys think? With a mechanic and a pilot, she was also the first woman to try and fly over the enormous Atlantic Ocean. As they set off, she waved at the whales far beneath her. The first woman to try and fly over the Atlantic Ocean. That sounds like an accomplishment as well, doesn't it? What about, can we talk about admirable traits? Would you think she might be determined or driven? Don't know. Think about that as you're reading. After many hours, they reached land. The world looked small, so small. The houses and cars were like toys. Even though Amelia wasn't flying the plane, when they landed, she became famous. People around the world were inspired by her story. Is that an accomplishment, inspiring other people? Amelia thought that every girl deserved to fly, so she founded a club with 98 other fearless pilots. A little later, she flew across the Atlantic all by herself. Would that be brave to do it all by yourself? Is flying all across it all by yourself an accomplishment? As her 40th birthday approached, Amelia decided she wanted one final challenge, to fly around the world. A brave navigator went with her. Now, a navigator is somebody who plots the course, who tells her where to go. They flew for thousands of miles over oceans and jungles. Over the savannah, which is a desert, where giraffes turned their heads in their trail, and some people said the journey was crazy. But Amelia wasn't afraid of living 1,000 adventures, so she flew on like a bird, further than anyone had gone before, never to return. Because Amelia always followed her own advice, if you want to do something, do it. You never know how far you could get. That sounds like a very determined trait, doesn't it? But she was never found again. So would that be a character flaw, that she was that driven? She was that driven to succeed and to try new things that she discounted her own personal safety? Could that be a flaw in her character? This is what we need to think about. Amelia Earhart, born in 1897, disappeared 1937. Here's the timeline. So she was 7 years old here in 1904, 1928, 1932. Amelia Earhart was the most famous female pilot of the 20th century. She became interested in planes after seeing an air show when she was nearly 20 years old. So she only saw the air show when she was 20. A little later, pilot Frank Hawkes gave her a ride in a biplane. From that moment on, she said, "I knew I had to fly." Amelia took lessons and bought her first plane 6 months later. She used it to set a new women's world record by flying up to 14,000 feet. She was the first woman to fly over the Atlantic, first with a mechanic and a pilot, and later by herself. In 1929, Amelia was the first president of the 99s, an organisation that supported female pilots. In 1935, she became the first person to fly solo across the Pacific Ocean, but Amelia was always keen for a new challenge. In 1937, she decided to try and fly around the world, a total of 29,000 miles. On July 2nd, she was trying to reach Howland Island in the mid-Pacific when she reported that their petrol, was running low. Soon after, all the communications from the plane stopped. There was a massive rescue attempt, but Amelia and her plane had vanished. In 1938, a lighthouse was built on Howland Island in her memory, and today her bravery is celebrated around the world. So there's a bit to take out of that as far as accomplishments, traits, and even flaws, okay? Sometimes a trait can also be a flaw, can't it, when you put your own safety at risk. All right, we're moving over to the anchor chart. Stay with me, going for a walk. Woo! Okay, so the title on the subject, Amelia Earhart. So what were some? We will talk about the accomplishments and how they influence people when we do our live lesson, okay? Make sure you watch this first. See you at 10:15. See ya.